Hello everybody, happy Wednesday. Here is your WeatherCast America QuickCast for Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. In this forecast, we're going to break down the return of a stormy and severe weather pattern, a very large shift from a fairly calm weather pattern that we've had over the last 7 to 10 days. We'll see another major weather pattern shift that will bring the return of widespread severe weather back to the central states, the southeast, and eventually the east coast. In addition to all hazards of severe weather over the next 5 days, there is a growing risk of flooding in the mid-Mississippi Valley from rounds of heavy rain and storms training over the areas where we've already seen flooding as an ongoing issue over the past month or so. So let's get into it. First, here's a look at today's weather. The Northeast stays cool with some rain and snow showers. The Great Lakes down to the Gulf Coast will see a beautiful sunny day. And the Central Plains will see sun early, but some chance of some stronger storms as we get into this evening with a marginal risk centered around eastern Kansas. Today is a conditional risk for severe storms, and again, it's in Kansas, western Missouri, northern parts of Oklahoma, where we will look for storms to fire late afternoon into the evening, bringing a risk of damaging winds and large hail to areas around Wichita and Kansas City. On Thursday, we'll start to see the effect of the pattern shift with a slight risk of severe weather by the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, for parts of eastern Nebraska, much of Iowa, northern Missouri, southern Minnesota, and extreme western Illinois around the Quad Cities. The primary risks are large hail and damaging winds, but a few tornadoes are possible, especially in that area in eastern Nebraska and western Iowa. That's where storms have the highest risk of producing all hazards quickly after they fire and mature into supercells. As the evening continues, the models indicate more of a merging of those early individual cells into clusters of storms that could produce large hail, but will increase the threat of damaging winds as they push east across Iowa. Going into the Easter holiday weekend, we'll see that pattern shift mature that we've been forecasting for over a week now, as the weather pattern transitions from a general troughing in the east and ridging in the west to the reverse, troughing in the west and ridging in the east. Typically, this pattern is much more conducive to severe weather, as it sets up that battleground between the cooler, drier air to the north and west, with the warm and moist air from the Gulf to the south and east. When pieces of energy ride around that troughing, they enhance the mixing of those two air masses. That creates the environment that helps the growth and development of thunderstorms. On Friday, we see a much larger severe risk area as the initial shortwave elongates, and that gives an increased chance of severe weather from the Great Lakes all the way through parts of Texas, where we do need some much needed rain in parts of north central Texas. Although a few tornadoes are possible, in general the upper level winds are running parallel along the boundary, and that indicates the primary threat for Friday will be clusters of thunderstorms producing damaging winds. Some large hail and a few tornadoes are possible, so stay weather aware and have multiple ways to get warnings if you're anywhere in this risk area. And we're not done yet. As of this recording, the Storm Prediction Center outlined another elongated risk along a somewhat stalled boundary from south central Texas all the way up through areas near Pittsburgh in southwest Pennsylvania. Like Friday, the primary threats on Saturday are damaging winds from clusters of thunderstorms, but there's a possibility of a more concentrated all hazards area of severe weather in Texas, as the next shortwave of energy begins to eject from the Rockies on late Saturday. This day is also a day where I'm very concerned about flooding. Parts of this risk area have already had rounds of heavy rain and storms from the day prior, and much of this risk overlaps with the waterlogged areas of the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley, where saturated soils mean that it won't take much additional rainfall to cause flooding. And unfortunately, Easter Sunday looks to be the most organized day of severe weather. Although it's still a little too far out for high-resolution short-term models, I do expect an all-hazard severe weather day with large hail, damaging winds, additional flooding, and tornadoes are all possible from the mid-Mississippi Valley all the way down to the Gulf Coast near Houston in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. On Sunday, it looks like we'll have a strengthening shortwave eject from the southern Rockies into the southern plains. Out ahead of that low pressure system, we'll have an open warm sector with some changing winds with height. And now let's break it down day by day. First, here's the HRRR model showing storm development in Kansas late afternoon and early evening on Wednesday. Although the model doesn't really show upscaling into supercells, if any storms do mature, that could increase their hail threat. By late in the evening, we'll see a cluster of storms, likely with damaging winds moving through eastern Kansas, maybe into western Missouri in that I-49 corridor from Kansas City down towards Joplin after dark. By Thursday afternoon, we look to see storms firing along the Iowa border, and these will be capable of producing large hail and damaging winds. There is a little bit of limited moisture in this area, and the wind profiles that far north might not be as conducive for tornadoes. As the evening continues, we'll look to eastern Nebraska for the risk of supercell development, with a brief window of all hazards of severe weather. But as we get after dark, around 9 or 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time, we'll see any supercells that develop start to cluster and transition into a hail and damaging wind threat, and we lose much of those tornado parameters. Looking out further with the GFS model, we can see that elongated troughing with several disturbances along the boundary. The first system that brings severe weather to Iowa on Thursday will be over the Great Lakes by Friday, and we see a new piece of energy eject over the Rockies into the Texas Panhandle. By Friday afternoon and evening, we'll see clusters of training storms along this frontal boundary. By Saturday, we'll see some strong storms from the previous day's convection, but new enhancement of severe storms as the next piece of energy enters the southern plains. Again, it looks like there might be a focal point of severe weather for Saturday in parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and into the Ozarks. And on Sunday, we'll see a developing low-pressure system in the central plains with storms firing and organizing along and ahead of the trailing cold front. Sunday appears to be the most organized chance at severe weather. We'll get a better read on the exact ingredients for Sunday's severe weather as we get a little closer to that event and models reason with the preceding day's severe weather and storms, but this far out it does look like Easter Sunday may be the most widespread, significant all hazards severe weather day over the next 5 to 6 days. And we might not be done there. Although the GFS run shows the main piece of energy lifting rapidly into Canada by Monday, the trailing cold front could be a focal point for some severe weather from the Appalachians through the northeast and even into the southeast by Monday afternoon. And further out, it's too early for specific details and timing, but we do see signs in the models that the general pattern continues into next week. If that holds, more pieces of energy are likely to eject from the Rockies, and we could see more severe weather widespread in the central plains and the mid-south. Either way, it looks like a very active spring weather pattern will continue for at least the next 5 to 10 days. So once again, with this latest pattern shift, we'll see rounds of severe weather possible from the central plains, mid-south, into the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and eventually the East Coast. This also means we'll be very busy here on WeatherCast USA with additional forecast videos, updates, and live streaming coverage of severe weather events. Please like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get notifications that we're live. As we near the peak of severe weather season, it's important to have multiple ways to get warnings and stay weather aware.